Hello, I'm Dan Aykroyd, and welcome to this fine motion picture emporium. It's nice to know you're here tonight, rather than at home shoving cheap little plastic cartridges into cheap imported video systems that keep you and your family hostage in your own home or apartment. Now, let's face it, big screen entertainment is what it's all about. We've enjoyed it for years. Movies are great. There's nothing like a good movie, or even a bad one for that matter.
Let's get drunk and watch the movie Dr. Detroit. I know very little about this movie outside of the same production team behind the Blues Brothers did this as well. It also stars Dan Aykroyd, one of my favorite comedians from the 1980s. He's done some prolific movies, including the Blues Brothers, and of course, the notorious Ghostbusters, one of my favorite movies of all time. I love him as an actor, I love those films, so I'm itching to check this movie out. I don't know much about it, so I'm flying into it blind. So you guys get to check out the trailer, peep that shit, and when we come back, you guys are gonna know my opinion on Dr. Detroit.
Dan Aykroyd is Dr. Detroit. Dan Aykroyd is Dr. Detroit. Let's party! Rated R.
Whoa, what a funky, fresh, early 1980s new wave comedy. What in the absolute fuck was this movie? Dr. Detroit. Such a strange film. There's a lot of potential to this movie in some regards, and at the same time, this movie makes no sense and it serves absolutely no purpose. As I was watching it, I found myself thinking, what's going on here? What are we doing with these characters? And why does this movie exist at all? At the same time, though, I feel like there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of cameos. I mean, you've got actors like Dan Aykroyd, and then you've got Howard Hessman, who, some of you guys know from WKRP Cincinnati, the old TV show from the 1970s. And it even has Fran Drescher. A lot of the music in this movie is very avant-garde and contemporary for the time period. You've got Devo, you've got James Brown. This movie also kind of reminded me of the Cheech and Chong films, the whole counterculture movement. There was elements of prostitution, drinking, marijuana. So yeah, you had that counterculture element to this film. And in those regards, when you think about it, on the level of a Cheech and Chong movie, well then the nonsensical plot and all the things that are happening at seemingly random actually start to make sense. So the basic premise to this movie is that actor Dan Aykroyd is playing this kind of nerdy, uptight college professor. That element was very reminiscent of the old 1980s comedies Revenge of the Nerds and Porky's. There was something about 80s movies where they were infatuated with nerd culture. I really can't explain it. I mean, I was raised in the 80s and I remember those movies, but when I look back on movies like Revenge of the Nerds and Weird Science and even motherfucking Dr. Detroit, I have to wonder to myself, what was this infatuation with nerds? Like, I don't understand it. Were they just seen as so geeky and weird and ultimately lovable that they had to become some sort of central figure in these 1980s comedies? Who the fuck knows? So you gotta look at this movie as an anomaly. It is one of those films that was made during an era where, Hollywood producers weren't afraid to take risks with their directors and their actors, and even if they churned up a failure such as this, well, when you watch it, you feel like that everyone involved gave it their all. Like, I feel like Dan Aykroyd in this movie is very high energy, and, not once did I feel like the actors were phoning it in, but at the same time, I was very confused by this movie. I didn't know what the fuck was happening half the time. You've got this nerdy college professor that's got to pretend to be a fucking pimp in the inner city, and he creates this character called Dr. Detroit, which sounds like a meh, you know, kind of a cartoony version of Muggsy or some shit like that. He wears an iron hand, a pimp suit, and his hair is just fucking crazy new wave, you know, all over the fucking place. It is the weirdest character I've ever seen, and at first I was repelled by him. I was like, what the fuck are they doing? How could anyone think this is funny? But by the end of the movie, strangely enough, a thing happened, to me at least as I was watching it. All of these odd elements, all of these odd characters started to come together, and it's really it only happens in the last 20 minutes of this film. It's so fucking weird. So the rest, like the middle of the movie, is definitely filler, and I found myself checking the time and going, when is this going to be over? But the last part of the movie actually kind of picks things up, and you could see what maybe the producers and the director and the writers and the actors had intended initially. You get this awesome music sequence with James Brown and this giant, you know, room full of people dancing around doing oot, oot, Dr. Detroit, and you're like, holy shit, the rest of this movie needed that. You actually see that glimpse, that glimmer of you know, creative integrity that, you know, was ultimately the entire movie of the Blues Brothers. You see that in an inkling in this film, and it's a tease. At the end of the movie, you're like, God damn it, why couldn't the whole movie be this badass, be this fun? But, you know, that's how films go, especially during this era. I mean, who knows what went on, you know, behind the scenes during production and the editing process. I mean, this was made during an era where you wouldn't get an unrated director's cut, although I gotta admit, guys, who the fuck wants an unrated director's cut of motherfucking Dr. Detroit? I gotta say, out of 10 stars, I could only give this movie, Dr. Detroit, a flat 5. That's it, guys. 5 out of 10.